scaled up the toy to my friend's height since he'll be wearing the costume. After drawing around the toy, I then printed it at full scale. I then started making the skeleton of Charizard using pieces of foam. This definitely looks like a mess, but just trust the progress. Once I was happy with the shape, I started covering it with very thin recycled plastic to make a pattern for the body. Then traced the pattern over to uphosteryfoam, glued it together. For the support of the tail, I used a PVC pole, which I bent using a heat gun. I then glued this in using hot glue once I was happy. I repeated the same steps for the tail. I added a very thin layer of wadding just to smooth it out a bit on the body. As you can see, the tail's sitting too low, so that'll be my neck. I repeated the same process I did for the tail support for the wings. My dog's weird. I then added thermoplastic to the joints for extra strength. Having nuts and bolts here means I can close the wings for transport. I then heated the tips and clamped them so they looked better. I then sandwiched the poles between some upholstery foam and carved them to the right shape. I used a template I made to build a foam skeleton for his legs. I then made a pattern from these to move it over to upholstery foam. Made huge wedges to build the feet. I made the base of the claws out of XPS foam, then carved down the shape using a knife, which I can't quite show. Then I soldered the details in, making sure I used PPE. I then covered them over in thermoplastic. I then made a big hole in the foam to insert slip-on shoes. Sketched out Charizard's arm and his muscles, and then I cut it out using upholstery foam. I then glued the foam together using contact adhesive. I added more muscles and sculpted out the hands. Made enough room for actual human hands inside. Then patterned the wearer's arm so I could make a fabric sleeve to hold the muscles on top of, since Charizard's arms are weirdly thin. I made the claws using XPS foam, sharpened them down like this with a knife, and sanded them, and then added thermoplastic. I glued them on using hot glue. I made a big block using upholstery foam. You don't have to do this, I just find it easier to sculpt. I then wired and coded up some LCD screens to make some animatronic eyes, but in the end I didn't use them because they were too small. I then painted the inside of Charizard's mouth with silicone, but I hated it and replaced it with some pink fabric. Using some LEDs and a molded vape machine I made, I created a fake fire effect. I made the eyes out of clay, which I then casted in silicone and resin, and I painted. I'll be redoing the eyes because they have bubbles in them. So I'll be fixing up the neck, and then it'll be time for the fabric. I quickly painted the nails, then wrapped each piece in cling film, and then taped it in duct tape and marked out the pattern. I then moved this pattern over fabric and sewed it together. Repeated this for each piece, and made sure they sat together properly. Some rubber glue to glue down some non-slip pads. Smoothed out the body, and repeated the same process on the body and tail. Choosing the mesh, I decided to use glue rather than sewing it because I felt that it looked less obvious. As you can see, everything is still completely hollow and therefore very light. At this point I realised a lot of the fabric doesn't sit right and I'll have to go back and rechange that. I'm really looking forward to seeing the fabric on the wings. Wrapped the head in some duct tape. I then cut it out, which I used as a pattern, and then transferred that to my jersey fabric. Once it was on the head, I then glued it down so that it was stretched and fitted properly. I sewed in some magnets whilst I was doing this so the mouth can close. I began airbrushing all the different parts inside the mouth, and the teeth, which I made out of clay. After finishing the head, I started the flame. At first I had really no idea what I was doing. I was just trying to make a shape so I could make a pattern, which somehow succeeded after layering some towels and then duct taping. After using some white plastisol, I just began making this effect. It really didn't take me that long. I then soldered up and coated this microchip, then airbrushed the foam, then made a hidden pocket for the electronics. And with that, Charizard is now completely finished.